Hey, you guys, welcome back. It's been a long time coming. I'm sorry about that. I know I've kept you guys waiting for a very long time. I know a lot of you guys have asked a lot of really good questions. A lot of you guys have been asking me to do a follow-up video on this initial build of the solar power generator. And in all honesty, I have no excuse as to why I haven't yet done a video, besides the fact that I absolutely hate video editing. I really do. I'd just rather be working on these projects rather than making a video. But with that said, this is a YouTube channel and you guys, I owe you a video, right? So let's follow up on this thing. I wanted to talk about some of the changes I've made to this box, the reasons why I've done that, and I wanted to cover a couple things that I didn't quite show in the first video. One of those things is charging, the battery pack, the charger I've used, and why I wired things the way I did for this, and some safety considerations that you should consider when building your own. Let's get right into it, okay? So one of the first changes that I made to this box was with this port here, the 12 volt car port, and I'll tell you why I did that, and a little background story why I did that. First of all, I'll mention that you guys, a lot of you have mentioned, had questions regarding 3S versus 4S configurations with regards to lithium-ion battery chemistries. And those are very valid questions, and it speaks directly to why I made this change. So with 3S configuration, you're going to have a low voltage of about 9 volts, right? So about 3 volts per cell times 3, that's about 9 volts. If you compare that to a car battery, something like a lead acid battery, 9 volts, that battery is long since dead, right? So that low voltage cutoff is a little bit low when compared to that. And things that are designed to run on a 12 volt accessory port are probably going to consider like 10 volts too low or 10.5 volts too low, basically like their cutoff. But at that point, you still have a lot of battery capacity left on the table there that you're not using, right? So that device might start charging. So back to my story, I took this camping, we took it portaging, we were in the middle of nowhere, and we literally had no access to power anywhere. And we were charging up a drone. We were using that drone throughout our trip. We had great shots, everything was great. And when we got close to about 50% of this battery's capacity, the DC charger that we were hooking up to this no longer wanted to charge the drone battery. And basically, it was because it detected that the output voltage on this battery was too low. So it was below the threshold of that device's charger, right? And I knew that kind of was going to happen at some point in time. Just I hadn't tested it to see, what the cutoff would be with that particular charger. Long story short, we got around the issue with my DC to DC converter, right? So I just hooked up a pair of plugs there and alligator plugs, connected it to the 12 volts cigarette lighter adapter, cranked this up to about 13 volts, and we were off to the races again, right? So we didn't miss much of a beat there. But had I not brought the cables with me, or had I not put in the step-up converter, then we would be in a bit of trouble, right? The 3S would have limited us in what we could actually do, right? So I thought that needed to be addressed, because this 12 volt accessory plug really, it should function the way a 12 volt accessory plug would function in your car, right? So that it's within spec of what you're going to plug into it. So with that said, what I added was a DC to DC step-up converter, which is this device right here. So it's a 13.8 volt DC constant voltage converter, and it's going to go up to 10 amps, right? So that's going to be about what you find in a accessory plug in your car anyway. 10 amps I think is sufficient. Maybe you could have done 15 amps or something like that, but 15 is probably the maximum that you're going to find, and that's going to be like in an SUV or something. But in a regular sedan or something, you're going to find probably has a limit of about 10 amps. So that closely matches it. it was about as big as I can go for this size box, and I think that works out pretty nicely, right? So now anything I connect to here is going to have a constant 13.8 volts, which matches very nicely with what you would find in a 12-volt accessory when the car is running, right? It's going to be about 14-ish volts, maybe 13 and a half, something like that, when it's running. When it's off, it's going to be closer to 12, right? So that works really well with that. So I no longer have to worry about that issue. The other change that I made, and again, it comes back to your questions and your suggestions, right? So a lot of you guys said that you wanted to see a port so that I can parallel batteries together. And I agree. When I first built this, I wanted to do that, but I didn't have an external battery at the time, and I didn't rush to put it in there, right? But since then, I've gotten a boat, and I've got a trolling motor, and I had a need to have a high current output port for this battery pack. So I figured, let's kill two birds with one stone. Let's add in a 30 amp high current port that I can use for that trolling motor. And also I can use it to parallel packs together, right? So there you go. So that's what this is. It's I forget what the name of this plug is. Basically, it's like an aircraft accessory plug or something. It's weatherproof and dustproof, and this cap has a little rubber gasket in there. It seals really nicely. In my boat, I've had a lot of water splashing about, and I've had no issues at all. The plug that mates with this also seals really tight. It screws in there, and it also has a sealed gasket in there. And it handles 30 amps very nicely. So the trolling motor that I got, I think on average uses about 20 amps under maximum speed, right? If you hit weeds, I noticed that it'll go up to about 25. I think I've seen it spike as high as like 28 or 29 amps, which is close to the threshold of what this pack is designed for. So I got lucky with that purchase of the trolling motor. But the main reason why I mentioned that is just that it handles the 30 amps very nicely, right? So you can parallel the packs together. You can use it for a trolling motor or some other high current device. So there's that. Okay, so actually one other thing I wanted to mention, going back to the 3S versus 4S argument, right? One thing I do want to mention is that the main reason why I stuck with 3S when I was deciding how to build this pack, 3S really gives you a whole world of options in terms of compatibility with being able to charge this with relatively available solar panels, like those foldable solar panels like what I showed you in the first video. It gives you the ability to charge it via 12-volt accessory plug in your car. You can use 12-volt chargers that are designed for that sort of thing. So basically it gives you a whole bunch of options in terms of how to charge this thing, right? Had I gone with 4S, although that would probably make it easier to handle the voltage fluctuations and avoid having to use a step-up converter for this port, it would really limit me in how I can charge this pack, right? You're going to have a harder time finding a solar charge controller that's going to handle 4S for lithium batteries. You're going to have a hard time charging it to full capacity or anywhere near full capacity with the 12-volt output on your car. You're going to have a hard time charging it with a solar panel that's designed for 12 volts, like open circuit 14 or 15 volts. Under load, it's going to be much lower than that, right? So I think the 12 volts, the 3S configuration is probably the best compromise that I could make in terms of still having a lot of options available to me, using components that are on hand and readily available, and also considering the fact that if you're actually using this, there's a good chance that it's because you have to use it, right? Like if I need to plug something in, I'm not going to plug it into this for fun. I'm going to plug it into a wall, right? But if I'm using this, it's because the power's gone out, right? or I'm someplace really remote, camping, car camping, or whatever, in the middle of nowhere in the bush where I don't have access to even a car, I have to use foldable solar panels, right? So keeping it 3S keeps those options open in terms of how I can charge it, how I can use it. If I went with the 4S, yeah, there are benefits to that, but then there's a lot of drawbacks as well, in my opinion, in terms of how you now have to recharge this thing, right? You have to have device-specific chargers that bring in the proper voltage. You got to have a proper solar charge controller that's probably a lot more expensive than what I used in here. So weighing the pros and cons, you guys decide for yourselves what's best for you. But for me personally, 3S was the best compromise, and that's why I went with that. Okay, so with that said, let's talk a little bit about the charging, right? Because we never really covered that in the first video, and I know that's actually a huge part of the build for this, and we should go over that, right? Hey guys, so let's talk about charging. So what was my charging solution? How do I charge this pack, right? What I purchased was a lithium-ion specific 3S battery charger. So this is designed, I guess, for the e-bike industry, right? And I'm going to talk about why I did that and safety, okay? So this is a 12.6 volt charger made specific for lithium ion. The solar charge controller that I have in here, and that's designed for 3S, right? So 12.6 volts is the absolute cutoff, maximum voltage. The solar charge controller that I used in here is also configured for lithium ion 3S. So again, 12.6 volts as the maximum absolute cutoff. And then third layer there is the BMS that I used. So that as well is configured for 3S, 12.6 volts, absolute maximum cutoff. Why am I saying this? You have 1, 2, 3 layers of redundancy, guys. Redundancy. This is DIY. I'm not an engineer. I can't guarantee these components from China are going to be robust and reliable. I didn't design it or build it myself, so I want redundancy. I want safety. So you have safety in a device-specific charger for 12.6 volts. You have redundancy in the solar charge controller for 12.6 volts. And you have redundancy in the BMS for 12.6 volts, right? So that means that at no point in time will this battery pack ever see 12.6 volts hit the actual battery, which means that it will never overcharge unless you have catastrophic failure of all 3 of these layers failing at the same time, which in my opinion is astronomically impossible, right? So safety. So that's the AC charger, right? This one is rated at 12.6 volts at 5 amps, so that's 63 watts. I have a 10 amp one. It's also for an e-bike battery. It's 12.6 at 10 amps, and that's 126 watts. It charges faster, but I choose to use this one. I don't, when I'm charging this up, I don't see a need to speed charge the thing. The slower you charge up the batteries, the longer the cycle life is going to be, right? The more cycles you're going to get out of the battery, just if you're a little bit more gentle with it. The 63 watts also is pretty close to the, I can't remember if the foldable solar panel that I got was 45 watts or 65 watts. I think it was 65 watts. Go back and look at that in the previous video. But in any case, it tells me approximately how long it's going to take to charge this thing under normal conditions if I'm in the field. And I kind of prepare for that, right? And I use this thing sparingly, knowing how long, if I have to charge it and I really need it, how long it's going to take to recharge based on how long it normally takes to charge with AC power, right? So there's no real difference there for me. So if I'm remote or whatever, I'm kind of prepared for what to expect, right? And if I'm getting close to low on the battery, I can plan for that accordingly. and start to limit my use. So again, guys, safety, right? Redundancy. Don't be stupid, right? You're building something yourself. You're gonna put this in your home. You probably have kids and a family in the house. Don't be stupid, okay? Don't rely solely on one component to save you from catastrophic failure like a BMS or a charger or the solar charge controller. Layer that stuff in so that by design it's safe, right? Enough of that. Okay, so let's talk about actually charging this thing up. So this is plugged in. So as you know, I have two options for charging. I have the this port here that I use for the solar charging, and I have this port here that I use for the AC charging. So a lot of you guys ask me questions about this. Let's turn it on. A lot of you guys ask me questions about this meter here, right? Whether or not it's going to have to be wired up differently to detect charging, or do you need a separate meter to detect charging current? The answer is no. This thing does it all. So it measures power in and power out, right? So if I put power in, like I'm going to do now, you should see, is this thing on? Yeah. Oh, that was stupid of me. The battery is actually fully charged. Okay, so again, redundancy. Not good for the video that I'm trying to make, but it shows you that this thing will not be overcharged. But let me drain the battery a little bit, and then I'll show you what I'm trying to show you, okay? Give me 1 second. Okay guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. So that actually illustrates perfectly redundancy, right? So I was trying to demonstrate for you charging the thing. My battery was already fully charged at about, what was it, 12.4 volts on the battery. And obviously I plugged it in and nothing happened, right? And so that illustrates to you the safety, the built-in safety of all the different layers, right? So if this thing would not charge over 12.6, the solar charge controller would not allow it and the BMS would not allow it, right? So I think the cutoff is actually a little bit lower than 12.6. I think it's around 12.4, right? So I think that's the highest voltage I've seen on this one fully charged. But in any case, I've drained down the battery a little bit more. So we have, we're now at 91% and 12.1 volts. I don't know if you can see that with the glare of the light there, but in any case, take my word for it, that's what's happening. So let's take this charger now, plug it in. And when we do that, you should see it lights up. Hopefully you can see that. And what's happening now, so we have 29 watts is being delivered to the pack, and you see the light pulsing green, and you see now the battery animation on the display there, right? So that indicates that it's charging. You also see, so on the display, you see the time on there, and so that time indicates the time to full charge. So it works in reverse, right? So when you're discharging, it tells you time to depletion, and when you're charging, it tells you time to full charge at the current rate of input or draw, right? So that's how that works. So hopefully that answers your questions. A lot of the questions I had was in relation to charging. I think what I've implemented here, although it's DIY, I think it's on par with the level of safety that you would find in a commercial product, right? There's multiple layers there. It's very safe and very redundant. Let's see, what else can we talk about? Let's talk about the battery construction. And for that, I'm not actually going to open up this pack and disassemble it. I'm going to take you to an older video that I did when I actually opened it up to put in this port and add the DC to DC converter for the 12 volt port. So with that said, we'll roll that video now. Okay, we're back. So hopefully that video showed you what the pack looks like. I know for the actual construction of the pack, I didn't show you a video of how that was made, but I did show you still pictures and show you the self-fusing, the individual self-fusing that we talked about. So hopefully that answers a lot of the questions that you guys have had. Let's address the other huge question that I keep on getting on a daily basis almost, right? You guys want to see a step-by-step walkthrough on how to actually build this, right? A lot of you guys have been asking about that. And unfortunately, I'm not comfortable with doing that. Like I said before, I'm not an engineer, guys. I've answered a lot of this way to a lot of the people who have asked this, right? So I'm quite comfortable designing and building something that is under my own control, right? I know what I'm doing with it. I know if something goes wrong, I know how to handle that. I know how to deal with it. I know exactly what has gone into this pack, right? And if something's failing, I can deal with that because I know what's going on, right? And I'm prepared to take responsibility for my actions, right? My design. I am not prepared to tell you guys that this is, one-stop shop where you can just bypass any kind of understanding of electronics. Never soldered in your life, never did anything with electronics. Just follow my video and you're going to get a completed pack. It's going to be safe. It's going to be redundant. Everything's going to be great, right? No, that's not the case. I have no idea what you guys are going to do, right? I have no control over that, and I'm not comfortable empowering those who have very little knowledge to think that this is a suitable replacement for actual understanding and learning, right? If you guys cannot look at this and see the basic components of what's here and figure out how to build that, this is no disrespect for you, right? Because I was there at one point too. We all were, right? But if you can't figure that out, this is not very complicated, then chances are you have some learning to do, right? So with that said, again, no disrespect, just pick up a book, go to the library, and stay away from YouTube videos as your only source for learning. Those are great for getting ideas and for learning new concepts, but for your basic electronic knowledge, pick up a book, read and understand what you're doing. And when you get to a level that you really understand what you're doing, you can look at something like this and you won't have any questions about how to wire it, how to put it together, right? And at that point, you're probably have enough knowledge to do something like this safely, right? I'm not tooting my own horn and saying, oh man, I know so much. I don't. I know what I don't know, right? And that's why I'm being cautious with this. But with that said, I know a lot of you guys still want to learn how to do something like this, and you want to see a step-by-step build video. For that, I will direct you to Jehu Garcia. He's just put out a build video on his DIY power pack actually yesterday. He did an updated one. Today was the 21st, November 21st. So he just put one out yesterday. He has a really good video. If you want to follow that, by all means, go do that, right? That's why he put it out. He's really good. I've learned a lot of things from him. He's also built one earlier in the year during hurricane season. He sent one off to help the guys in Puerto Rico with disaster relief after their devastating hurricane that they went through, right? So Jehu Garcia is a great source for that if you want to see a step-by-step DIY how to do it. Sorry that I'm not gonna do the same thing here, right? Again, no disrespect, guys. We all have to learn someplace, but I don't want to be the guy that tells you how to do something and then find out later on down the road that you didn't do it correctly or you made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but you burned your house down or you hurt somebody in the process, right? You lost a child or something. I can't live with that. So yeah, I'm getting too deep here, but that's my feelings on the subject, right? So there's plenty of videos out there, guys. Go look for that. But for ideas and whatever, I have no problem sharing my ideas. I'm just not going to walk you through, hold your hand in building that, okay? So with that said, I think we've covered everything. Oh, actually, no, we didn't cover everything. There was a very good couple posts made earlier on when I first released the first video, and that pointed out a blunder on my side, actually. And if you look at the title of the first video, I say it's a 515 watt hour battery pack. That's actually factually incorrect, okay? What I didn't know at the time is that when you're calculating the runtime watt hours of the pack, you don't take the maximum voltage, so 4.2 volts per cell, and multiply that by the amp hour, the amp hours to get the total watt hours. What you'd use is the nominal voltage, and the nominal voltage per cell is 3.7. So 3.7, let me get the calculator here. Sorry for the dead air, guys. Okay, so 3.7 times 3 is 11.1 volts. 11.1 volts times 40.8 amp hours in the total pack gives you 452.8 watt hours. So 453 watt hours versus 515. My apologies for that, guys. And I think it was 2 guys or 3 guys who mentioned that. To you guys, thank you very much for pointing out my mistake. That's how you calculate it, right? So you use the nominal voltage, the midpoint between fully dead and fully charged, nominal voltage, the midpoint, 3.7, and multiply that by the amp hours of the cell or the total pack, and you get the runtime, the watt hours, right? Watt hour capacity. So 453 watt hour battery pack, not 515. And I will correct that in this video in the title. I did not change the title of the first video because then that's going to affect my YouTube ranking, and I don't want to start from scratch with that, right? So again, thanks very much for that, guys. And just another example. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an expert. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I'm willing to live with those mistakes. But you guys, you need to take responsibility for your own stuff, right? So I hope that I've covered everything. I have been searching around for a bigger pack because somebody made a really good comment, maybe even more of a challenge, but kind of asked if I can build something that will kind of take on what is that thing called? Oh my goodness. The Energy Kodiak. That seems to be the #1 solar generator out there in the market today that is really nice, small form factor, lightweight, and packs a tremendous amount of power in their lithium cells. And that's, I think it's a 1 kilowatt system or 1100 watt hours for that pack. I'm happy to say that I have been searching around for a suitable box to use for something in that sort of form factor, and I will at some point in time build something to kind of replicate what you get with that system, but obviously for less by doing it yourself, right? So don't expect that anytime soon because I don't have enough husband points for that. And for you guys that are married and are not rich, you'll probably understand what I mean by that. I mean, I gotta take my wife out on a couple dates before that. I gotta keep her happy before I start dropping down like another $500-600 on a bigger build where it's not entirely necessary, right? We already have this and I have a couple other things in the house. But I'll find a way to please the wife, keep her happy, build up enough points, and I'll put out that video for you guys. And hopefully that gives you some ideas for your own builds, right? So the goal there is to achieve 1 kilowatt and about 1,000 watt pure sine wave inverter, maybe 500 with 1,000 watt peak, something along those lines, I think is what is in the Kodiak, and make it more efficient, make it cheaper, and do it yourself. So with that said, I think we've covered it all. Stay tuned for that video. if not something else sooner. And thanks again for all your support, all the likes. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe and hit the little bell, and you'll get notified anytime I put out a new video. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you later.